Hey everyone, it's Kenlyn, and welcome back to my channel for the Astro and Energy Report for the week of December 1st. So we just had a new moon, which is a new beginning in the Sagittarius area of your chart. This new moon was at 9 degrees 32 of Sagittarius. And so we're going to look at the Sabian symbol for 10 degrees Sag. Haven't done that before on this channel, and I want to bring that in because it is so light and beautiful that I think we could all use something like that right now. And I'll tell you a little bit about Sabian symbols. We'll also talk about the retrograde planets, and particularly Jupiter retrograde in Gemini and how it is squaring Saturn and what that means for us. There's a real opportunity inside of these retrogrades for this week. Chances are you already feel it. There's a slowdown, there's an internalization. And so you may be feeling like sleeping more, like contemplating more, like taking hikes by yourself or watching videos or even being by yourself. Those are all really great things because it's a rest and digest period of time. And if you think about it, we just came through some insanity, like November was insane. Think about it. Only less than a month ago, we elected a new president in probably the biggest game changer of our lifetime as Pluto moved into Aquarius and really stepping into the unknown in such a deep way. We've had emotional lows. I have a friend who died, just tragic losses. And it's really put us in some kind of an existential questioning. And that is so appropriate for Sagittarius and for Jupiter. This moon is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so sun and moon. Mercury also is in Sagittarius. So there is a lot of existential questioning right now. Who am I? What am I doing here? What do I want to do? And it can be at a very deep level, nothing on the surface that you consciously decided to think about, but it's just naturally happening. And that is the purpose of retrogrades. I've been doing a little research into Jupiter retrograde because I happen to have a natal Jupiter retrograde. So I was curious about that. I also found out that the first president of the United States, George Washington, had a natal Jupiter retrograde and got to understand a little more of its qualities. The person who taught that webinar is Tony Howard. And what he said was that retrogrades are not diminished power of that planet, but redirected energy with a purpose. And I really like that because as I study astrology, some of the ancient astrology talked about detriments and weaker planets, malefic versus benefic. And I think modern astrologers are saying, you know what? Our consciousness has evolved to a point where we don't really need to call something bad or good. They just are what they are. And how we internalize them will be challenging or flowing or whatever. It'll have many different flavors because our sense of reality is not black and white. It's not extreme. And in fact, truth happens to be paradoxical. So we get to throw out, and this is a very Jupiter retrograde, especially in Gemini conversation, we get to throw out some of those old, outdated views, even in systems like astrology that just don't serve our consciousness in going forward. I do know people who ascribe to them and really it leaves them feeling like victims of the cosmos. Like I have a malefic planet that's ruling, and so everything is horrible or going wrong. And granted, there are challenges. Like I'm not going to lie, I get it. There are challenges, but it's really not to ascribe it to some geometrical condition. It's just life happening, and we get to dance with it. And some moves are harder than others. And when people die or things don't go our way or we hit rock bottom or we're in the middle of an addiction, we're in the middle of an argument or a fight, those things are hard, but we are made of the stuff that can get us through it. And that's really why I do this channel for feminine leaders. It's our time to be the leaders. And what does that really mean for this? It's like show the way through by navigating it with truth, with authenticity, with humility, with don't know mind, while at the same time making choices and decisions. So those are the messages I want to bring forward as we move into a very philosophical, internal questioning time. Let's get on to the Sabian symbol for a moment. Now, the Sabian symbol, I'm going to pull up my notes, were channeled by this woman named Elsie Mae Wheeler. At the turn of the last century, she was born. And in 1920, she moved to San Diego, which is the county in which I am doing this transmission. So I think that's kind of cool. And the Sabian symbols are these channeled understandings of each of the degree points of each of the signs. So each sign has 30 degrees and there are 12 signs. So she channeled a message for each one of those degrees for each sign. And you can look at your own birth chart. So for this new moon, for example, it's 9 degrees, 32 seconds. We're going to look at Sagittarius 10 degrees. 10 degrees Sag is the theatrical representation of a golden haired goddess of opportunity. I love that. Like, how unique. So it signifies rewards, awards, acclaim, a sense of presence, charisma, beauty. They're all signatures of this degree point. So if you have a birthday that is 9 something of Sagittarius, then this would be your sun sign Sabian symbol. There will be offers that look too good to refuse. And normally we say, and they are. But in this case, we're saying, and they could be full of promise, but they should still be looked at carefully. These are the words of the Sabian symbol. Now, I love that because that represents Jupiter, this abundance, bringing offers. And Jupiter is the ruler of this new moon and the sun that we're in right now and the Mercury we're in right now. So it could bring these beautiful offers as a rebirth in some area of your chart. But it's also saying, because there's this T-square with Saturn, you got to look through the details. You got to dot your I's and cross your T's. You can't go into magical realism. You need to go into practicality along with the receiving of the gift. It's the both and. It can be something of a reward for you that could lead to something bigger and better. That's pretty cool. And it may be an answer to your dreams, and it may well turn out to be a grand adventure with a big reward. So how many are claiming that for this new moon? Now, this new moon can take place, the fruition of this new moon can take place over the next 2 weeks, or indeed until the full moon in Sagittarius, which happens in Gemini season. So the shadow of the Sabian, which I love that it has that too, is be aware of idle chatter and kind of like throwing this energy away. And this idle chatter has no basis in reality. It could be like gossip. It could be judging other people. It could be judging people for how they look, very superficial. It could be opportunities that indeed are not what they seem and should be passed on. They're false opportunities. It could be like snake oil or propaganda. And certainly we've had just Black Friday and Cyber Mondays coming up and all of that bright, shiny object chasing. That's the shadow side of this Sabian symbol. So embrace the gold, embrace the fact that there can be something like out of nowhere, a new opportunity. Someone says, you're the one to do this thing. And you maintain an open mind, but you also walk the paces. So that's beautiful. I'm going to claim that as my reboot on prosperity, and I hope you will too. So let's go into a little bit of this retrograde with Jupiter and understand how Saturn can work, because this is the energy signature of this time. It's really requiring a lot of patience because we're used to Jupiter like causing and creating the abundance and moving things forward and expanding our horizons and our opportunities. But in the case of the signature of a retrograde, Jupiter is asking you to throw out the old playbooks, like, well, asking you which old playbooks need to be thrown out are the family of origin beliefs. So if you've got perhaps Jupiter and Gemini in your second house, you're going to want to revisit and reimagine your relationship with money. And I have a story about that if I have time, I will weave that in here. But whatever area of your chart, there's a reimagination so that you can make meaning and make sense out of what just happened, of who you are now. So we've blown up a lot. We've changed a lot. And I mean, by blown up, I mean like we've blown up our reality a lot of what we think life was, or how things went. You know, it's not the 1950s anymore. It's not the 2000s anymore. It's not even the 2010s anymore. I was watching a couple romantic comedies from that era, like 2010, 2012. And I'm like, wow, we don't even make films like that anymore. Things are edgier. Like romantic comedies are now edgier. It's almost like that innocence is gone. There's a level of raw truth and reality that we now expect in our drama that we didn't expect before. We are reinventing and remaking ourselves from the inside out. So it's like Jupiter retrograde is becoming more reflective. I'm going to look at some of my notes. And wants us to go in and explore the internal landscape of how you've held something. What was true? How did you get here? What is your notion of success? I mean, Jupiter also rules the big picture of success in society. What do we consider successful? What do we consider just? What do we consider as progress? So all of those things, on some level, you're asking yourself. And when Jupiter goes direct, like finish the process. So when Jupiter goes direct on February 4th, there will be this sense of integration of those new responses in you as the new you. If we blow off that we're really thinking these things, then we never integrate them. So for example, like in my life, I've got Jupiter in Gemini in the second house. Second house represents earned money. Now, what just happened to me was the whole Pluto story, whole Pluto around Kundalini yoga. And remember, I talked about that. Pluto in Capricorn is in the ninth house, higher wisdom, higher learning, religion, beliefs. Those things got overturned with the revelations that happened starting in 2019 around Kundalini yoga, which is something that I loved very much. It was my practice. It was my spirituality. I loved the mythology of it and the story of the founder and all the things. Because I have Jupiter retrograde, you're never going to find me as a true believer, like drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm just never going to do that. But I did have enough where I just really, really appreciated it. And so fast forward to now and Jupiter being retrograded in Gemini, I'm having a chance to revisit how spiritual people make money. Like you can't make that up. I didn't purposely put that on my menu. Like, gosh, I really need to think about that. No, I could just feel that as I watched Breath of Fire, that was HBO special 4-part series, I was really struck by a mystical axiom that you can't mix God and money. And when you do, what happens? And we just got to see through that story of Guru Jagat, what happens when you mix influence, power, money with spirituality. It just ends up poisoning the entire thing. So I've been contemplating quite a bit around being a mystic because I know that I have a mystical heart, and also being a woman who is an entrepreneur. And I love business and I love making money and I love transformation and the business of transformation. I teach it with the Creators Academy and making products that people want to buy so that they can be transformed. I love all of that. And that whole thing with Pluto and the second house with Jupiter and Gemini has got me rethinking it, because Gemini would be online sales, online business. I mean, you can't make this up. So I'm not finished with my process. I'm just deep in my process. But here's the thing. If I wouldn't question this and realize that I'm questioning this, and this is hopefully for you, and you can go back and look at your chart in your area and think through what does that chart represent and connect some dots, maybe I would just do business as usual, but something would feel really yucky inside. So now I know that whatever transformational process this Jupiter retrograde in Gemini wants to take me on, that by the time I'm out of that in February, I'll be ready to talk about it. I'll have some ideas about it. I'll have maybe some best practices, rules of thumb, I'll come out with this statement that may be bold around it. You know, I think I get to integrate it into my business at that point and how I do business from then on. It's already, I can feel shifting and changing things. But that's my point. This is what a retrograde is for. And can you imagine if we didn't have the retrograde? Then we just keep going as business as usual. But all of a sudden, our lives feel clunky to who we are now. So retrogrades give us an opportunity to redirect the energy inward. And so you can imagine we've got the Mercury retrograde, that's compounding it. And then we are going to go Mars retrograde. So Mars is just going to slow down the action and give us a time to really be quiet and in stillness and vibrate more with the Schumann resonance and less with the frenetic energy of holiday season, wherever you are, particularly if you're in the United States. It's like insane here. I love it when friends go to other places, Europe or wherever, and they tell me that the pacing of life is so different because it's very fast, particularly in Southern California where I live. So that Mars is important, even though it's frustrating. It's important to listen and get behind that. Now, I don't think it means that things come to a dead halt and nothing can get done. That just isn't my experience. It's just to slow down. Okay. So a couple things to say is that Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, you can go down a lot of rabbit holes with that because, Gemini's superpower is curiosity and new ideas, wanting to know. Remember, Jupiter is the details, where Sagittarius is the philosopher and big picture thinker. So it lives on the axes of knowledge. And they're opposing each other right now. So this deep dive into the weeds of information is really part of this excavation time of getting more research and more information to find out where you land, get other people's opinions. However, and this is a really big however, Jupiter wants you to make sense of things. So you got to come to some conclusions, which means you're going to have to stop researching. You're going to have to make decisions and discern whether you're going to give weight to this or that. And it also is going to ask you to become your own compass. Instead of outsourcing your beliefs to a particular person, a guru, a religion, your parents, or the opposites, I'm going to believe the opposite because they believe it. No, really to actually take away that external stimulation and go inward and truly ask, what's true for me now? Jupiter loves the truth. And it can be in its shadow side dogmatic and superior and bombastic. But in its healthy octave, it's really about what is true, what has meaning. Let's go to the final piece of this transmission, and that is Saturn. And I've come to love Saturn because Saturn is the teacher as well in a different way. It's like a coach. I look at more like Jupiter as the guru, the wise one, the teacher, and Saturn as this coach saying, okay, you want to take these big visions that you have or these ideas, they live in the mind, and you want to make them real. That's when you hire Saturn. Saturn makes things real into 3D. Without Saturn, we wouldn't manifest. It would just be a bunch of really big ideas. You would be one of those big talkers, that has a big plan, but you never execute on the plan because you need Saturn to get into the weeds, to brick by brick lay the foundation for that big vision. So one of the things that they said in that Jupiter retrograde was don't outsource your Saturn to someone else. And I love that because Saturn will always, it will be the IRS, right? Telling you got to do something. The IRS in this country is the Internal Revenue Service and responsible for taxation and collecting the taxes. So don't outsource your taxation to the IRS. Instead, choose that you want to pay your taxes because you want things in your world to be clean and hygienic. And you don't want to get a scary letter in the mail that says you owe taxes, and then you have to deal with the fallout. You have to clean up. So when we have Saturn in the mix, we also have to be on our game and not outsource our shoulds. Turn your should into a choice by realizing what it's going to do for you. That's Saturn. All right. So some of the ways that Saturn and Jupiter, they're opposites and they're squaring. And that means that we've got the sun and the moon also in opposition. And that can mean confidence versus caution. Those are the polarities that are being played with. Now, our answer is going to be somewhere in the middle. We're here to walk that yoga union with these two opposites: vision and reality, optimism and pessimism, and growth and contraction. They're all necessary. You can't have one without the other and be on this planet. Unfettered growth is cancer, or corporations that have gone off the rails, who pollute and do other nefarious things because they need to keep growing for their shareholders. There's nothing in nature that does that. Contraction is a part of it. So when we understand that, then we get alongside of it and we can hold this truth that everything is happening for me, no matter what it is. And then let's go back to that new moon in the Sabian symbol. Then what happens is when our mindset is open like that, a new opportunity can flow in and we can be surprised by it. And then we can investigate it and use our thinking capacity to determine if it's for us. Does it have our name on it? Is it valid? Is it real? But we open ourselves up to that when we know that everything is actually for us. So these energies this week are going to have some different signatures of move forward, no step back, get some things done, no take it easy, and sleep a little bit longer. But know that you're just being reformed, reshaped. You're reimagining who you are now, what you believe now, what are the assumptions you want to go forward now. So having said that, I hope you have an incredible week, and let's rub our hands together, gathering all the positive energy that we have generated and beaming it out. May all beings benefit from the merits of our effort.